WTMA. This is Tara on TMA.
Joining me now is Alanna Nash. Hey, Alanna.
Hey, Tara, how are you?
Good. Okay, well, you made news just a few days ago, pretty big national news. You're writing, freelancing for the AARP. And, of course, you've written a lot of great, pretty famous biographies, Dolly Parton, Jessica Savage, Colonel Tom Parker. So your job is to interview Linda Ronstadt, and to ask her questions about her upcoming book. But in the process of that, she kind of drops a bomb on you and tells you something nobody knew about her. Tell me what that was.
She sure did. But I have to tell you, first of all, that my editor said, make sure she gives you some personal revelations. And I said, well, listen, this is one of the most guarded people ever to interview. You can't get anything personal out of her really in detail, so don't expect much. So I had to eat my words because 5 minutes into that interview, I was asking her, just a routine interview about her book, as you say. And she was talking about how she started talking about her horses. She started the book out originally talking about growing up with horses. And I just threw in kind of a jocular line that I liked that she referenced her pet cow, Luna. And she said, oh, yeah, she was a great old girl. She said, but she gave me a tick. She gave me a tick disease. And I think that's why I'm sick. And I said, you have tick disease now? And she said, well, I can't sing. I have Parkinson's. I can't sing a note.
Wow. So she has never told anybody this before. She has Parkinson's disease.
Right. Even her friends didn't know.
Wow. But she told you.
She told me, and I'm not entirely sure why she told me. I think probably, I don't know if I was the first interview for the book. I don't know if it was because we had talked before and we had a mutual friend in Rosemary Clooney, and we always swap Rosemary stories before we really get down to the interview. I don't know why she chose me, but she did. Maybe it was the magazine. The magazine focuses a lot on health issues, but I certainly felt honored that she did tell me and shared her story.
Alanna, this is the strangest story. It sounds like she's saying, I read the interview, that she was bitten by a tick, and we've had this in the news a lot lately, that getting Lyme disease, there's a kind that lasts for the rest of your life and really makes a mess of you. That she thinks apparently the Parkinson's might have come from the interaction from the tick.
She does believe that, and my editor, of course, said, "My gosh, what is the scientific data to link these two things?" I immediately got on the web, and there is some data to support this, but certainly there's more research needed before we can all panic that this tick that we got working in the garden may lead to Parkinson's down the line. Well,
the saddest part here, you heard her voice, unbelievable, just awesome, and she can't, apparently because of this, she says she can't sing anymore and hasn't been able to for years.
Right. She told me that the last 5 or 6 years that she was on stage, she really could not sing very well. And interestingly, I have a friend in Charleston who wrote to me that she had seen her at a spa in concert some years ago, and she knew something was wrong, that Linda didn't have that great power. She's always had that amazingly powerful, soaring voice, that was not evident. So I guess people were noticing, and Linda is such a perfectionist, particularly in the studio, that she would not want to sing at all if she couldn't sing very well. But as she's now saying, I can't even sing Happy Birthday. It's not that I can't sing the way I want to sing. It's that I cannot sing at all.
Wow. Talking to Alanna Nash, you interviewed Linda Ronstadt earlier this week and made national news with that interview because of what she revealed to you. What other things did she tell you in the interview that people might want to know?
Well, we talked a lot about the Parkinson's, about the fact that she now is, if she has to walk any distance, she uses poles. And she needs a wheelchair when she's traveling. So, this disease is more advanced than even I feared. So that was heartbreaking. The fact that she can't sing anymore is heartbreaking. But the fact that she walks very slowly. She said her speech is not affected at this point. By the way, she speaks you would never know it from speaking with her on the phone. But we talked about a lot of other things. We talked about how she actually wrote her book herself. She did not use a ghostwriter, and her process for that. And it's refreshing in these days of ghostwriters, and I work as a ghost myself, to see somebody who really says, I don't know how to write, but I want to take on this challenge. And that's the way she's lived her whole life, whether she was doing public theater, The Pirates of Penzance, operetta, to kind of doing an album of standards with Nelson Riddle. She's never backed away from a challenge. So I like that she did that. She also talked about some of her kind of famous romances, but guardedly, because she's not the kind of person to kiss and tell. We'll
get into that in just a minute, Alanna Nash. But first, I want to know, you said that Linda Ronstadt, when you talked to her earlier in the week, that she sounded fine. What is her prognosis?
She didn't talk about that, but from other friends that I have who told me if she's already using poles, she's deep into her disease.
Apparently, she told you she thinks that she may have to try marijuana, which I guess is, she says, effective for Parkinsonism.
She said that a number of Parkinson's patients do find it very effective, but she doesn't like any kind of marijuana. She was never one of these druggies in the 60s and 70s. And she said that she's shied away from medical marijuana. She doesn't want to feel stoned. And she's the kind of person who doesn't even like to take an aspirin, she said. So she's resisting a lot of the drugs. But and she's investigating alternative treatments and looking into everything. Interestingly, yesterday I got a letter from a PR guy who represents Muhammad Ali and his wife Lonnie, who asked how to get in touch with her. They wanted to invite her to the Parkinson Center there in Phoenix. So I was very pleased to be able to forward that on.
That's fantastic news. And apparently, Alanna Nash, when you interviewed Linda Ronstadt, she also talked about her previous flames, including, I didn't know this, Jerry Brown?
Oh, she and Jerry Brown were quite an item for a long time. And she said, you wouldn't think to put them together, except that she's a very politically minded person. She's very liberal. She has a lot of opinions about what's wrong with the country and how to fix the country. A lot of magazines don't like to print that kind of stuff because it's polarizing. But she's a very smart gal, and I could see where she and Jerry Brown would hit it off from that factor. But she also had some very funny stories about him, about how he's famously tight with a dollar. And she talked about George Lucas. Filmmaker George Lucas, to whom I believe she may have been engaged, but she said she was the one who left both those relationships, and she just wasn't the marrying kind.
She adopted 2 kids, right?
She did.
Yeah, and not till in her 40s, it looks like.
Well, see, she's 67 now. Her daughter Mary is 22. Her son Carlos is 19.
Yeah, so definitely she talks about, I guess apparently still, Linda Ronstadt still very close with them. They live, at least her daughter does, on the property.
Yes,
there with her.
On the property, right.
Okay, well, I got to tell you, if I heard Linda Ronstadt when she was popular, it was in utero. I wasn't around for that. So, somebody who was, why do you think people care so much about Linda Ronstadt? What has made the story in the last week so big about her getting Parkinson's?
I think it's a number of things. Number one, that voice was truly one of the most luminous, glorious voices of the 20th century. And for anybody who grew up, any of the boomers, I mean, that was a defining voice of our generation. So, first of all, I think we're all just profoundly sad and hurt that this woman can no longer sing, this gift that defined her to us. And also it reminds us of our own mortality, of course. But and she's such a nice person. I mean, she's such a lovely person. And I kind of joke to people, why couldn't it have happened to some sort of no talent singer? Why did it have to happen to one of the best?
I was just curious about you, Alanna Nash. I mean, your story in yourself, all of the books that you've written, Jessica Savage, Colonel Tom Parker, all that. How did you get this interview with Linda Ronstadt? Because you mentioned that she's very, famously reclusive as far as talking about herself, giving interviews. So how did you do that?
Well, she does have this book coming out, Simple Dreams, which comes out September 17th, but it does not talk about the Parkinson's. And I had an advanced copy of that. And it was a routine assignment from AARP, the website, because I write about music for them, just to talk to her about the book and do a combination of book review and interview. So once we got that horribly sad news, we just threw the book review out the window and just went for the news factor. But I get my work comes either because I pitch people stories, or they just know of my interest in certain topics, and then they call me and give me assignments. So that was one that literally fell in my lap, and people say congratulations for getting this, but she handed it to me. I was prepared to kind of probe around a little bit with her, because the book has so many holes in it about the reason for her retirement, and the reason there's just this kind of cryptic reference to when she had a still healthy voice. So I was prepared to ask questions about that, but I didn't even need to. I mean, she just dropped it on me. So I was just very fortunate that I got that assignment and that she chose to share that news with me.
Fantastic talking to Alanna Nash. This is funny. I didn't realize this. Okay, apparently Linda Ronstadt's backup band ended up being who? She talked about this in the interview. This is wild.
Eagles.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
She was there for so much of rock and roll or country folk that ended up being. She was there part of the genesis for so much of this. I mean, Jackson Browne was a pal. Of course, Linda was also part of the trio with Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris. I mean, she's been around a long, long time. So it's just the late '60s, and it just was such a pillar of the California country rock community. So, yep, the Eagles started out as her backing band.
It's so funny to read your interview with Linda Ronstadt, because she's just talking about these huge names in the music business, like their neighbors just down the street. I particularly thought it was interesting what she had to say about one of my favorite singers from that era, Jim Morrison. Tell me about that.
Well, she hardly ever says anything bad about anybody. She certainly is outspoken about political issues, but she really did not like Jim Morrison. And she did talk to me in the interview about how she just found him to be too reptilian. She didn't like his singing. She didn't find him a nice person. There's some anecdotes in the book itself that you'll want to read where she really kind of unloads on him, but she just found him very distasteful. I mean, there are a lot of people that she holds dear in her heart, and she'll tell you that. Janis Joplin is one of them. She talked about it in the interview about how sweet she was and how Linda was. I mean, Janis was always giving props to the musicians whose shoulders she stood on, that she learned from. But boy, Jim Morrison was not one of her faves.
No, reptilian. Wow, that's a slam, especially for a dead guy.
He was the Lizard King, though. So I suppose
that's true. That's true. All right. Anything else you want to tell us about your interview, Alanna Nash? Congratulations on making the national news this week, talking to Linda Ronstadt.
Thank you very much. Only that I think that I hope that what will happen here, and I think the one reason she went public with this, and as late as November, she wasn't even telling close friends, so it really is huge news, is that I think this will kind of change the face of Parkinson's, and that she is a true intellectual. I mean, that is one very bright, very well-read woman, and I think that she will help, as Muhammad Ali has done, help spur further research and quick research, because there are so many boomers who may be falling into the same awful hole of disease, and it's time for some more serious research. One
last question, Alanna, as an author yourself, what do you think? How did she do on the book? I mean, she's got Parkinson's. Linda Ronstadt writes this book herself. What's your opinion of the book itself?
Well, it's a musical memoir, and that's part of the subtitle, which means she doesn't talk about her personal life very much at all. I mean, her mother's death, for example, is one sentence. We didn't even know she was ill, and it's one day my father called and in a taut, gray voice told me that my mother, who had been ill, had died, period. I mean, there's a lot that she leaves out. I would love to see her do an additional book. But she also said to me that she couldn't. It would have to be something really, really special. She would have to work with somebody, because her typing skills are far less than what they were even when she was writing the book. So I think she knew that she needed to do it. She also was pretty frank about she needed the money. I mean, she did not write most of her songs, so she's not getting those big royalty checks that musicians who also wrote there. So she has dwindling savings, and this was one of the reasons she did write the book. So I'm hoping that this will open a whole new chapter in her life, that something wonderful and big will be waiting for her as a result of her revelation.
Well, okay, Alanna Nash. No, that makes sense, because she says in here that she lives in a small cottage and that her daughter lives in an even tinier cottage. I just assumed that her being liberal, she chose to live that way, but I guess maybe she has to for financial reasons.
She has to. I think that's what she was saying. Yes, that she has to. Plus, she lives in San Francisco. Let's.
Well, that's true. It probably costs $500,000 for that small cottage.
That's right.
You're right. Absolutely.
But she also said to me, "I've made all the money I'm going to. I'm certainly not going to make any more. But I'm hoping that her book will be a bestseller and that she will make a considerable amount of money on this. It's very tough to make money on a book. Let me tell you that. Even sometimes with bestsellers, you don't really make very much money. But I'm hoping that, again, this is a kind of portal for her, and that so many people love her. I mean, this story has really struck a nerve all around the world. I mean, people are so devastated to think they will never hear that amazing voice live again. So I'm hoping that people will really rally around her, help her perhaps learn about new treatments for her disease, maybe a deep brain stimulation, which is such a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
And also help her perhaps with other arenas of income. So I'm so glad that she went public.
Yeah, well, I know Michael J. Fox is going to be, starting his own show again. I wouldn't have thought that was possible, but he's doing it. So maybe there's some hope for her, Alanna Nash. Now, you write for AARP.org, so we could find your work there?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, fantastic. Well, congrats again on the scoop this week. Great read. And I'd love to have you back on WTMA.
Thank you so much. You're always so kind to me there, you and John. Thank you.
All right, great. Alanna Nash, thanks for joining us today. Tara on TMA time it is 9.